Hello there, Church of God. This is Michael Guzman here with a third video in a multi-part series about the Pacific Coast Collective and the PCC upgrade proposal. The first couple of videos I talked about the history of the Pacific Coast Collective and then also about the projects and accomplishments that the Pacific Coast Collective has achieved, leading up ultimately to this video on the upgrade proposal itself. And so I'd love to be able to jump in and talk to you about what is this PCC upgrade proposal. The PCC leaders gathered together with other leaders from their different associations and assemblies. Some of these were chairs of associations or credentials committee members, influential leaders, or pastors that gathered together in the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022, once in Portland and then just the second time in Sacramento. While these leaders were gathered together there, they really were talking about a couple of things, these limiting factors, and then soon I'll show you some opportunities that are perceived on the table. Currently, out of all of those associations on the Pacific Coast, these are some of the limiting factors the leaders have identified and are recognizing as constricting issues. One, that we have limited mass versus critical mass. Each of our associations has a certain number of churches and individuals in those churches that are actually each limited in mass, limiting what we might be able to do. But together, collectively, we do have some critical mass to be able to do larger scale projects together. There's divided resources, divided by those state boundaries or regional boundaries that we have versus the opportunity for the shared resourcing that we could leverage together. We also have, each of us, aging and dying churches and even regions that are just in a different life cycle stage that merits making some changes there. We all recognize that we've got a choked pipeline of new leaders that as maybe lead pastor positions open up, there are very few people that are available to be able to come and to fill those positions. We also recognize some unique circumstances that 4 of the 9 existing PCC leaders are currently in some form of a transition, and then that 3 of those 9 are actually in unpaid seats. You've got a variety of dynamics, again, each of these limiting to some degree. These next things, these empowering opportunities, are 8 things that in the proposal we think that we could move forward and accomplish together. So 1, we think we could fuel a leadership pipeline development across all of those regions. 2, we think that we could do some strategic analysis of the PCC needs and opportunities in each one of those areas. Again, if you approach that equation from your own region or state's boundaries, sure, you could do that strategic analysis, but to be able to look at it on a whole and understand the landscape of the whole Pacific Coast Collective, I think there's some great needs and some great opportunities that we can discover and then leverage together the collective power that we bring to the table. We could do some tuning of regional meetings and conferences to the larger Pacific Coast scale. So instead of trying to reproduce 9 separate annual conferences, maybe with their own themes and their own speakers, we could actually leverage together, still potentially have those 9 conferences, if that were the right way to go about it, but actually pool together those resources and align them in a way that allows us to be able to move together. We could also see the development of Pacific Coast partners, sister churches, and sister cities. Again, if you imagine that those boundaries begin to fade away and there's cross-regional pollination, we could have a congregation in Alaska partner together with a congregation in Northern California, maybe that would never have had any connection point, but now are serving together in a variety of ways. Again, it could be just completely relational, or it could be project-oriented that those relationships happen. We could see a development of Pacific Rim partnerships abroad. Guam, Hawaii, and other places in the wider Pacific Rim are already included in these associations, and we could see further ministry abroad through global strategy as we partner together to really push the needle on some of those projects. We could see the overall development of a movemental identity. Again, not just as we have PCC leaders involved, but to see congregations and individual members understanding that they're a part of something larger with bigger metrics that are being measured and succeeded in and celebrated in as we accomplish those things together. We think that's going to be very liberating and incredible for each of those people to be able to experience. We also think that we can harness and develop a network of larger congregations that are already in existence to be able to work together to benefit the smaller ones. This is oftentimes a situation that exists region by region or state by state. But again, if you look at it, the whole Pacific Coast, there's so many opportunities to be able to work together in some great ways. And then last, we think that we can really press into practicing the presence of God as a foundational signature of the collective. That has been something that each of the collective leaders has held as a key value, and we think we could really see some great growth coming from each of those. So really, those are some of the outcomes that we want to push into and see across the way. And so out of that conference, we came back with each of the leaders in the associations unanimously voting to move forward with the PCC upgrade proposal. Now, that doesn't mean that there are not questions. In fact, there are loads of questions that are in place, but each of us agreed to be able to move forward with that process and explore these ideas a little bit further. What that's going to mean is that we're looking to freeze the independent hiring processes that some of the associations are currently in, and then look to and explore the possibility of collectively hiring a team of PCC regional pastors for a 3-year demonstration project. So this would be a pilot project that we would try and see about hiring at that level. What we've done is we've appointed 16 representatives to what we're calling the Fusion Center. This Fusion Center will then help to be able to work through many of these details that are just going to require a lot of minutes and hours of conversation. We want to basically be able to establish the interest and support that's needed from each association. We recognize as leaders that we each have boards, councils, so on and so forth, with which we need to be able to see the interest and support to be able to move forward in. With that Fusion Center, what that Fusion Center would do besides working through some of those details is actually finalize the working details of what the demonstration project would look at. So if you went back to those 8 items that I identified as the concept that we were discussing, they would work those things out in much greater detail to iron those out. They would also then work to organize a PCC staff search team to then scout, interview, and hire those PCC staff that would be on the team. They would also look to organize a PCC board of representative leaders who would then execute, deliver, and evaluate that demonstration project in collaboration with the PCC staff team. That board would then work together with the staff team to develop some measurable goals and targets for the 3-year PCC demonstration project. Ultimately, then, each regional association would individually meet to review and approve those measurable goals and targets for that 3-year PCC demonstration project. And then finally, that demonstration project at the end of that 3-year time frame would have those goals and targets executed by that group and then also reviewed by June of 2025. So again, that's the PCC upgrade proposal in a nutshell. There are loads of questions and loads of details that still need to be ironed out. And what we want to do is we want to be able to hear from you. What are the types of things that you want to know more about in all of this so that we can discuss these things together and seize the opportunity that is in front of us? Thanks so much for watching.